The morning sun cast long shadows through the twisted remains of what had once been downtown Chicago. Captain Jessica Chin pressed herself against the cold concrete wall of a collapsed overpass, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. 3 months had passed since the arrival, and the world she had known was nothing more than ash and memory. Jessica remembered the exact moment everything changed. She had been leading a training exercise at Fort Campbell when the sky tore open above major cities worldwide. The Kithra hadn't announced themselves or demanded surrender, they had simply begun killing. Methodically, efficiently, with the casual indifference of exterminators clearing a building of pests. The first wave had targeted military installations, government facilities, and communication networks. Within 6 hours, the chain of command had collapsed, leaving scattered units to fight independently against an enemy they couldn't understand. Jessica's unit had held their position for 3 days before the base was overrun, forcing the survivors to retreat into the Kentucky wilderness. That was where she had learned her first lesson about fighting aliens. Conventional tactics were worse than useless. The Kithra could predict human military responses with uncanny accuracy, as if they had studied human warfare for decades before launching their assault. Traditional fire and maneuver tactics resulted in swift annihilation. Only by abandoning everything she had learned in 20 years of military service had Jessica managed to keep her people alive long enough to reach the underground networks. Now, watching a Kithra patrol drift overhead with predatory grace, Jessica felt the familiar mixture of rage and determination that had sustained her through 3 months of guerrilla warfare. These creatures had murdered her world, but they had made one critical error. They had assumed that breaking humanity's infrastructure would break humanity's spirit. Above her, the alien patrol craft moved in their characteristic zigzag pattern, their hulls gleaming like oil slicks in the pale light. The Kithra, as the xenobiologists had named them before the universities burned, moved through Earth's atmosphere as if they owned it. Which, Jessica supposed grimly, they did. Her radio crackled softly. Phoenix 7, this is Nest. Report status. Jessica keyed her transmitter twice. All clear. Speaking was too dangerous now. The aliens had learned to triangulate human communications with frightening efficiency. She watched the patrol pass overhead before beginning her careful descent into the storm drains that would take her back to Base Echo. The tunnels beneath Chicago had become humanity's lifeline. What the city planners had designed for water management had become a vast network of survival. Miles of interconnected passages, forgotten maintenance areas, and abandoned subway lines now housed the remnants of the human race. At least, the remnants that had made it this far. Jessica's boots splashed through ankle-deep water as she navigated the familiar route home. Home. The word felt strange now. Home was a converted maintenance chamber 60 feet below ground, shared with 12 other survivors. Home was the smell of recycled air and the constant drip of groundwater. Home was wherever you could close your eyes without dreaming of the burning sky. The checkpoint ahead was manned by Tommy Rodriguez, a kid who couldn't have been more than 19 before the world ended. Now he looked 40, his eyes carrying the weight of things no one should have to see. "Evening, Captain," he whispered as she approached. "Admiral's looking for you. Says it's important." Jessica nodded and made her way deeper into the complex. Base Echo had grown organically over the past months, branching out through service tunnels and forgotten basements. What had started as a temporary shelter for a few dozen survivors now housed nearly 3,000 people, one of the largest remaining human settlements they knew of. The command center occupied what had once been the basement of the Chicago Federal Building. Ironic, Jessica thought, that the government's emergency bunker had become exactly what it was designed for, just not in the way anyone had planned. Admiral Marcus Jackson stood hunched over a holographic display table, one of the few pieces of military hardware they'd managed to salvage from Offutt Air Force Base before the aliens had turned it into a crater. "Jessica," he said without looking up. "Good. Come see this." Admiral Jackson had aged a decade in 3 months. His hair, once steel gray, had gone completely white, and deep lines creased his face like battle scars. but his eyes still burned with the determination that had made him the obvious choice to lead humanity's scattered resistance. The holographic display showed a three-dimensional map of the Chicago metropolitan area, overlaid with pulsing red markers indicating alien installations. Jessica had seen it hundreds of times before, but something was different now. New markers had appeared, and the patrol patterns had shifted. "Our deep reconnaissance teams found something," Jackson said, finally looking up at her. "Look at Sector 7G. Jessica leaned closer. A massive red marker pulsed in what had once been Grant Park, far larger than any they'd seen before. "What am I looking at, sir?" "Command and control," Jackson said, his voice barely containing his excitement. 3 days of surveillance, pattern analysis, and signal intercept have confirmed it. This is their primary coordination hub for the entire Great Lakes region. Jessica felt her pulse quicken. For months, they'd been fighting a guerrilla war against an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The aliens' coordination was their greatest advantage. They operated like a hive mind, sharing information instantaneously across vast distances. But if they could disrupt that coordination— "You're thinking what I'm thinking," Jackson continued. "Cut off the head, and the body becomes confused. Our analysts estimate that destroying this facility would cause a 12-hour communication blackout across their entire network. 12 hours where their forces would be operating independently, without central coordination." 12 hours? Jessica repeated. "Enough time to hurt them. Enough time to retake the cities. At least temporarily." Jackson manipulated the display, zooming in on the target area. "But it won't be easy. The facility is heavily defended, and our window of opportunity is narrow. The aliens are already beginning to adapt to our tactics. They're learning." Jessica studied the tactical overlay. The command center sat in the middle of what had once been Millennium Park, surrounded by multiple defensive positions. Alien ground forces, automated defense systems, and constant aerial patrols made it nearly impregnable. Nearly. "What's the plan?" she asked. Jackson smiled grimly. "Operation Nightfall. A coordinated strike using every asset we have left. Surface teams will create diversions across the city, drawing their attention away from the primary target. Meanwhile, you'll lead a small insertion team through the old utility tunnels that run beneath the park." "How small?" 8 people. "Any more and you'll be detected before you reach the objective." Jessica felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came before a dangerous mission. 8 people against the most heavily defended alien installation on the continent. The odds were not encouraging. "I'll need my pick of personnel," she said. "Done. I've already compiled a list of candidates from across all resistance cells. The best of the best." Jackson's expression grew serious. "Jessica, I won't lie to you. This is a one-way mission. Even if you succeed in destroying the facility, the chances of extraction are minimal." "I understand, sir." "Do you? Because I need you to understand that this isn't just about tactical advantage. If we can't prove to ourselves that we can still fight back, that we can still hurt them, then we've already lost. Morale is at breaking point. People are giving up. They need to see that we haven't given up." Jessica looked around the command center. Tired faces bent over jury-rigged equipment, trying to make sense of an alien technology that operated on principles they barely understood. These people had lost everything: homes, families, the world they'd known, but they were still here, still fighting. They deserved better than to die slowly in these tunnels. "When do we go?" she asked. 72 hours. That gives us time to finalize the assault plan and brief your team." Jackson paused. "There's something else. Intelligence indicates the aliens are preparing something big. Seismic sensors have detected massive underground construction in multiple locations. We don't know what they're building, but whatever it is, we're running out of time to stop it." The briefing room was cramped, carved out of what had once been a storage closet in the building's sub-basement. 8 chairs arranged around a metal table, 8 faces illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. Jessica looked at each member of her team, knowing that in 3 days some of them wouldn't be coming back. To her right sat Sergeant Major David Park, a demolitions expert who had somehow managed to smuggle half an arsenal out of Fort Campbell when the aliens first struck. Park's story was one of improvisation and survival. When his base was overrun, he had single-handedly destroyed 3 alien transport vehicles before fighting his way to the evacuation zone. His knowledge of explosives was encyclopedic, but it was his calm under pressure that made him invaluable. Park had learned to read alien construction patterns, understanding how their biological technology responded to different types of explosive force. His steady hands and tactical insight had already saved the Resistance dozens of times over. Jessica remembered their first meeting in the ruins of Louisville. Park had been leading a group of civilian survivors, using improvised explosive devices to clear safe passages through alien-occupied territory. His quiet competence and absolute reliability had made him the obvious choice for any mission requiring precision demolition work. Across from him, Lieutenant Sarah Morrison represented the best of what remained of the Air Force. A former drone pilot from Nellis Air Force Base, she had adapted her skills to operating the few remaining pieces of electronic surveillance equipment the Resistance possessed. Morrison's background in signals intelligence had proven crucial in understanding Kithra communication patterns. She had been the first to recognize that their command structure operated on biological rather than purely technological principles. Before the invasion, Morrison had been tracking terrorist cells across the Middle East, using pattern analysis to predict enemy movements. Now she applied those same skills to an enemy that operated according to completely alien logic. Her ability to see patterns in chaos had made her invaluable for mission planning, but Jessica knew that Morrison carried deep guilt over her inability to predict the initial alien assault. "I should have seen it coming," Morrison had confided during one of their planning sessions. "The atmospheric disturbances, the unusual solar activity, all the signs were there. I was looking for human threats when I should have been looking up." Next to Morrison sat Marcus Webb, a former Chicago PD SWAT officer who knew the city's underground better than anyone. Webb had been on duty when the aliens struck, leading evacuation efforts in the downtown area until his precinct was vaporized by alien weapons. He had spent the first weeks of the occupation moving through the storm drain networks, rescuing trapped civilians and establishing safe houses in forgotten corners of the city's infrastructure. Webb's knowledge of urban environments was unparalleled, but it was his understanding of human psychology under extreme stress that made him truly valuable. He could predict how people would react in crisis situations, where they would run, where they would hide. That knowledge had made him one of the Resistance's most successful extraction specialists. "The thing about Chicago," Webb had explained to Jessica during her first week at Base Echo, "is that the city planners never imagined what we need these tunnels for. They built them for water and power, but they accidentally created the perfect insurgency network. Miles of forgotten passages, redundant systems, access points that haven't been mapped since the 1920s. The aliens know about the obvious routes, but they can't find them all." Dr. Elena Vasquez completed their technical team. A former professor of xenobiology at Northwestern University, she was one of the few people who understood how alien technology functioned. Vasquez had been conducting research into extremophile organisms when the invasion began, studying life forms that thrived in environments previously thought uninhabitable. That background had given her unique insights into Kithra biological systems. Vasquez's laboratory had been destroyed in the first wave of attacks, but she had managed to salvage crucial research data and equipment. Working in improvised underground facilities, she had developed the first effective countermeasures against alien technology. Her neural disruptors were cobbled together from salvaged components and scientific principles that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. "The Kithra represent a form of evolution we never imagined," she had explained to Jessica. "They've merged biological and technological development to the point where the distinction becomes meaningless. Their ships aren't built, they're grown. Their weapons aren't manufactured, they're cultivated. Understanding that gives us our only chance to fight them effectively." But it was Vasquez's personal loss that drove her scientific dedication. Her research team had included her husband and 2 graduate students, all killed when the university was targeted in the initial assault. She threw herself into developing anti-alien weapons with the intensity of someone who had nothing left to lose. The muscle of the team came from 3 former Marines, Corporals Jamie Chin, no relation to Jessica, despite the shared surname, Alex Rivera, and Thomas Kim. They had served together in Afghanistan before the world changed, and their squad cohesion was legendary. Jamie Chin had been a reconnaissance specialist, skilled in deep penetration missions behind enemy lines. Her ability to move unseen through hostile territory had made her invaluable for gathering intelligence on alien installations. Chun was small and quiet, but possessed a tactical awareness that seemed almost supernatural. Alex Rivera brought heavy weapons expertise and an aggressive combat style that had earned him 3 Purple Hearts and a Silver Star during his tours overseas. Rivera's approach to problem-solving was direct and effective. When faced with an obstacle, he found a way to eliminate it with maximum force. His modification of conventional weapons to be effective against alien armor had given resistance fighters their first real chance in direct combat. Thomas Kim was their communications specialist and medic, trained in keeping squads functional under the worst possible conditions. Kim's steady demeanor and dry sense of humor had kept morale up during the darkest periods of the occupation. His ability to jury-rig communications equipment from salvaged parts had enabled coordination between scattered resistance cells. The 3 Marines had lost their entire unit during the evacuation of Camp Pendleton, fighting a delaying action that allowed thousands of civilians to escape. They had held their positions against overwhelming alien forces for 18 hours, falling back only when their ammunition was exhausted and their position was completely overrun. "We left too many people behind," Rivera had said when they first arrived at Base Echo. "Every mission since then has been about making sure that doesn't happen again." Jessica activated the tactical display, showing the 3-dimensional layout of their target. The alien command center rose from the ruins of Grant Park like a twisted spire, its organic curves seeming to pulse with malevolent life. The structure defied conventional understanding of engineering, appearing to have been grown rather than built. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jessica began, "meet our objective. Intelligence designates this as a Kithra Type 7 command nexus. Based on our analysis of smaller installations, we believe this facility coordinates alien activities across an area roughly the size of the former state of Illinois." She manipulated the display, highlighting their planned route. "We'll be inserting through the old steam tunnels that connect to the park's underground infrastructure. Dr. Vasquez's research indicates that the aliens have difficulty detecting human life signs through the specific mineral composition found in these tunnel walls." The briefing continued for 2 hours, covering every aspect of the mission from equipment loadouts to contingency plans. Jessica watched her team absorb the information, asking tactical questions and raising concerns about specific aspects of the operation. These were professionals who understood the stakes and were prepared to do what was necessary. But as the briefing concluded, Jessica felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders. She was asking these people to follow her into almost certain death, and they were agreeing without hesitation. It was both humbling and terrifying. Jessica activated the tactical display, showing the 3-dimensional layout of their target. The alien command center rose from the ruins of Grant Park like a twisted spire, its organic curves seeming to pulse with malevolent life. The structure defied conventional understanding of engineering, appearing to have been grown rather than built. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jessica began, "meet our objective. Intelligence designates this as a Kithra Type 7 command nexus. Based on our analysis of smaller installations, we believe this facility coordinates alien activities across an area roughly the size of the former state of Illinois." She manipulated the display, highlighting their planned route. "We'll be inserting through the old steam tunnels that connect to the park's underground infrastructure. Dr. Vasquez's research indicates that the aliens have difficulty detecting human life signs through the specific mineral composition found in these tunnel walls." "How specific is difficult?" asked Morrison. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. "The Kithara use a form of biological sensing that relies on detecting neural electrical activity. The iron oxide deposits in these particular tunnels create a natural shielding effect. We estimate a 60% reduction in their detection range." 60%. repeated Corporal Chun. That still leaves 40% chance they'll spot us coming. Which is why timing is critical, Jessica continued. Admiral Jackson's diversionary attacks will begin at 0300 hours, drawing the majority of their patrol assets away from the central facility. We'll have approximately 30 minutes to reach the objective before they begin repositioning their forces. Park spoke for the first time since the briefing began. What's our target inside the facility? According to Dr. Vasquez's analysis, the command functions are centralized in what we're calling the neural core. It's located approximately 200 feet below ground level, at the base of the spire structure. We destroy that, we cut their communications network. And how exactly do we destroy something we've never seen before? Asked Webb. Dr. Vasquez pulled up a new display showing the internal structure of similar alien facilities. The Kithara use a form of biotechnology that merges organic neural networks with crystalline information storage. In simple terms, their computers are alive. But that's also their weakness. Biological systems can be disrupted by introducing incompatible elements. She produced a small device from her pack, about the size of a coffee mug and covered in blinking lights. This is a neural cascade disruptor. Once activated and placed within 50 meters of the neural core, it will send feedback loops through their network that should cause a complete system failure. Should, Rivera noted grimly. 67% probability of success, based on our analysis of smaller installations, Dr. Vasquez admitted. But even partial success should severely degrade their capabilities. Jessica looked around the table. Questions? Extract plan? Asked Kim. There isn't one, Jessica said simply. Once we activate the disruptor, every alien in the city will know exactly where we are. Admiral Jackson will attempt to provide fire support, but realistically, we'll be on our own. The room fell silent. They all knew this was a suicide mission, but hearing it stated so bluntly still carried weight. So we go in, blow their brain, and probably die in the process, Webb summarized. All to buy the Resistance a few hours of breathing room. That's about the size of it, Jessica confirmed. Could be worse, Park said with a slight smile. Could be raining. The tension in the room broke slightly as several team members chuckled. Jessica felt a familiar warmth, the camaraderie that formed between people facing impossible odds together. It was the same feeling she'd experienced in Afghanistan, in Syria, and all the other places where she'd led good people into bad situations. Gear up starts tomorrow at 0800, she said. We'll spend the next 2 days running simulations and finalizing our approach routes. I want everyone to know this mission inside and out before we go underground. As the team filed out, Dr. Vasquez lingered behind. Captain, there's something else you should know about the neural core. Jessica paused in gathering her notes. What is it? The Kithara command structures aren't just technological, they're partially psionic. The neural core will have a powerful psychic presence. Being in close proximity to it may cause effects. What kind of effects? Hallucinations, disorientation, false memories. The alien neural patterns can interfere with human brain function. I've prepared some basic countermeasures. She handed Jessica a small injector. But you should be aware that your team's mental state may become compromised as you approach the objective. Jessica pocketed the injector. Anything else I should know? The disruptor device will need to be manually activated. Once it's turned on, it can't be shut off remotely. Whoever arms it will need to stay within the facility until the process is complete. About 10 minutes. 10 minutes for someone to stay behind and die. Yes, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. I'm sorry. After the scientists left, Jessica remained alone in the briefing room, staring at the holographic display of their target. The alien spire seemed to pulse with its own rhythm, like a massive heart beating in the darkness. In 3 days she would lead 7 good people into that structure, knowing that most of them wouldn't come out. But that was the job. It had always been the job. The only difference now was that the stakes weren't just political or strategic. They were existential. Humanity's survival hung in the balance, and Operation Nightfall might be their last chance to tip the scales. The pre-dawn darkness felt different now than it had before the arrival. There was a weight to it, a sense of malevolent presence that made every shadow suspect. Jessica crouched at the entrance to Storm Drain Complex 7, watching her team make final equipment checks by the light of heavily shielded tactical lamps. The diversionary attacks had begun 20 minutes ago. Distant explosions echoed through the city as resistance cells struck alien outposts across Chicago's north side. Jessica's earpiece crackled with scattered reports. Jackson's plan was working. The aliens were repositioning their forces, leaving gaps in their coverage around Grant Park. The storm drain system had become more than just humanity's refuge, it had become their highway. Over the past 3 months, Resistance engineers had mapped and modified thousands of miles of underground passages, creating a hidden network that allowed movement beneath the aliens' detection systems. But tonight's route would take them deeper than anyone had gone before, into sections of the infrastructure that predated modern mapping. Environmental readings are stable, Morrison reported, consulting a modified atmospheric sensor. No indication of alien biosensors in the immediate area. Dr. Vasquez activated her jamming device, creating a localized interference field that would mask their biological signatures from Kithara detection systems. The technology was primitive compared to what the aliens used, but it represented months of painstaking research and experimentation with captured equipment. Remember, Vasquez said quietly, the jamming effect has a limited duration. We have perhaps 4 hours before the device's power cells are exhausted. 4 hours to penetrate the most heavily defended alien installation on the continent. Jessica checked her watch and signaled for the team to move out. The initial section of their route took them through familiar territory, the maintenance tunnels that had been converted into living space for Base Echo's population. They passed sleeping areas where families huddled together for warmth, workshops where engineers jury-rigged equipment from salvaged components, and storage areas filled with the precious supplies that kept the resistance functioning. Children watched them pass with wide, serious eyes. These were the generation that would grow up knowing only war, for whom alien occupation was the natural state of the world. Jessica wondered what kind of adults they would become, whether they would even remember what peace felt like. Checkpoint Alpha, Webb whispered into his throat mic as they reached the first transition point. This was where their route diverged from the map sections of the tunnel system, leading into the forgotten infrastructure that connected to Grant Park. The passages here were older, built during Chicago's massive public works projects of the early 1900s. Steam pipes ran along the walls, long since cold and abandoned. The architecture was different too, constructed with the solid engineering principles of a more confident age, when Americans believed their civilization would last forever. Jessica felt the irony of that confidence as they moved through tunnels built by people who could never have imagined the fate that awaited their descendants. But there was also something comforting about the solid construction, the evidence of human determination to build things that would endure. The water was deeper here than in the newer sections, reaching above their ankles and carrying the accumulated chemical residue of decades of urban runoff. Park tested it periodically with a small sensor, ensuring that alien biological agents hadn't contaminated their route. Slight elevation in exotic particle readings, he reported. Still within acceptable parameters, but we're getting closer to their area of influence. The aliens' presence could be felt as a subtle wrongness in the environment. The air carried traces of their biochemical processes, and the water showed signs of contamination from their organic technology. Even the echoes sounded different, as if the alien installations were affecting the acoustic properties of the surrounding area. As they moved deeper into the tunnel system, Morrison began picking up electronic signatures from the alien command center. "I'm reading massive EM activity ahead," she reported. "The facility is drawing enormous amounts of power from multiple sources." "What kind of sources?" Jessica asked. "Unknown. The power signatures don't match any human technology, and they're operating on frequencies we've never seen before. Whatever they're doing in that facility, it requires incredible amounts of energy." They reached Checkpoint Bravo after 90 minutes of careful movement. This was their last point of contact with the map tunnel system. From here, They would be navigating by compass and instinct through sections that might not have been entered by humans in decades. Webb consulted his hand-drawn maps, correlating them with Morrison's electronic readings to plot their final approach. According to the city engineering records I found, there should be a steam distribution hub about half a kilometer ahead. From there, we can access the park's underground infrastructure. The steam distribution hub proved to be a vast underground chamber, filled with massive pipes and distribution valves that had once supplied heat to downtown Chicago's major buildings. The space felt like a cathedral built for industrial worship, with arched ceilings disappearing into darkness above their heads. But the chamber also showed signs of alien modification. Organic growths had attached themselves to the steam pipes, creating a hybrid network that seemed to pulse with its own life. The aliens were using Chicago's infrastructure as a foundation for their own technology, growing their systems into the bones of human civilization. Biomechanical integration, Dr. Vasquez observed, studying the hybrid constructions with scientific fascination. They're not just occupying our infrastructure, they're digesting it, breaking it down and rebuilding it according to their own biological patterns. Jessica felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground temperature. The aliens weren't just conquering human cities, they were transforming them, turning humanity's greatest achievements into components of their own technological organism. How long? She asked. At their current rate of integration, I estimate complete biological conversion of major urban infrastructure within 2 years, Vasquez replied. After that, these cities won't be human anymore in any meaningful sense. The team pressed forward through the converted infrastructure, following pipes that had once carried steam but now pulsed with alien biofluids. The sight was deeply disturbing, humanity's engineering heritage being consumed and transformed by an intelligence that operated according to completely different principles. They reached the final access point 2 hours after beginning their underground journey. A maintenance shaft led upward to the storm drain system that ran beneath Grant Park, putting them within 200 meters of the alien command center. But as Webb prepared to open the access hatch, Morrison's sensors detected movement above. Multiple contacts, she whispered. Looks like a patrol passing directly overhead. They waited in tense silence as alien footsteps echoed through the drainage system above their heads. The Kithara patrol moved with the fluid coordination that marked all their activities, but Jessica could hear something different in their movement patterns, a hesitation, perhaps even confusion. The diversionary attacks were working. The aliens were beginning to respond to threats across the city, stretching their defensive resources thin. Admiral Jackson's plan was creating exactly the kind of chaos they needed to succeed. After 10 minutes, the patrol moved on, and Webb carefully opened the access hatch. They emerged into a storm drain that ran directly beneath the alien facility, close enough to feel the vibrations of massive machinery operating above their heads. This is it, Jessica said quietly. From here we go up. 8 people preparing to assault the most defended target on the continent. 8 people carrying humanity's hope for survival. 8 people who had volunteered to die so that others might live. Jessica checked her watch one final time. They were precisely on schedule, which meant that resistance cells across the city were beginning their own assaults at this very moment. In 30 minutes, they would either be heroes or casualties, but either way, they would have struck a blow for humanity's survival. Equipment check, she ordered. Final preparation for surface insertion. Her team moved with practiced efficiency, verifying weapons, communications gear, and Dr. Vasquez's precious neural disruptor device. These were professionals who understood that attention to detail could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Above them, the alien command center waited, a fortress of living technology that coordinated the destruction of human civilization. In a few minutes, they would enter that fortress and attempt to tear out its electronic heart. The storm beneath Chicago was about to break. Sound off, Jessica whispered into her throat mic. Morrison ready? Park good to go. Webb ready? Vasquez ready? Chen ready? Rivera ready? Kim ready? 7 voices confirming they were prepared to die. Jessica pushed the thought away and focused on the mission parameters. They had a 30-minute window to reach the insertion point, another 20 minutes to penetrate the facility, and 10 minutes to reach the neural core. After that, it wouldn't matter. Remember, no direct communications once we're within 500 meters of the target, Jessica reminded them. Hand signals only. Dr. Vasquez, you're our tech lead once we're inside. Park, you're on point for the approach. Webb, you're our guide until we reach the facility proper. The storm drain stretched ahead of them like the throat of some massive beast. The water was deeper here than in the maintenance tunnels, reaching halfway up their boots and carrying the chemical smell of urban runoff mixed with things Jessica didn't want to identify. Webb took point, his knowledge of the underground infrastructure proving invaluable as they navigated the maze of connecting passages. The route took them through abandoned subway tunnels, forgotten utility corridors, and sections of the old pneumatic mail system that dated back to the early 1900s. As they moved deeper underground, the sounds of the diversionary attacks became muted, replaced by the steady drip of water and the distant hum of alien machinery. The neural core's presence could be felt even at this distance, a subtle vibration in the air that seemed to resonate in their bones. After 40 minutes of careful movement, Webb held up a closed fist, signaling a halt. They had reached the final approach, a maintenance tunnel that emerged in the sub-basement of the old field museum, less than 200 meters from the alien command spire. Jessica checked her watch. They were behind schedule, but not critically so. The diversionary attacks were still drawing alien attention to the north side of the city, giving them the cover they needed. Webb activated a small periscope device, extending it through a drainage grate to survey the surface. After a moment, he turned back and held up 3 fingers, 3 alien sentries visible in the immediate area. Better than they had hoped. Dr. Vasquez moved forward, producing one of her disruption devices. This one was smaller than the Neural Cascade Disruptor, designed to create localized interference with alien sensors. She activated it, and waited for the small green light that indicated it was functioning properly. The plan from here was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. They would emerge from the drainage system into the museum's loading dock, cross 200 meters of open ground to reach the alien facility, penetrate its outer defenses, descend to the neural core level, plant the disruptor, and activate it. All while surrounded by an unknown number of hostile aliens who could kill them with weapons that defied human understanding. Jessica made a final communication check with Base Echo. Admiral Jackson's voice came through clearly. Phoenix 7, this is Nest. Diversions are holding enemy attention. You have a green light for infiltration. Copy, Nest. Phoenix 7 going dark. Jessica switched off her radio and looked at her team. 7 faces painted with camouflage, eyes bright with determination and fear. Good people who deserve better than this. Good people who were about to prove that humanity wasn't finished yet. Webb led them up through the final passage, emerging into the loading dock of the Field Museum. The familiar smell of Chicago air, exhaust fumes, lake water, and the metallic tang of alien technology filled their nostrils as they took their first look at the target. The command spire dominated the landscape before them, rising 300 feet into the air like a twisted cathedral. Its surface seemed to shift and flow in the pale light of dawn, organic curves suggesting something that had been grown rather than built. Smaller structures surrounded the base, defensive positions, communication arrays, and things that defied easy categorization. But it was the absence that struck Jessica most powerfully. Grant Park had once been the green heart of Chicago, filled with tourists and locals enjoying the lakefront. Now it was an alien landscape, the grass replaced by a dark, purple-tinged substance that seemed to pulse with its own life. The trees were gone, replaced by towering structures that looked like massive thorns jutting from the earth. Morrison tapped Jessica's shoulder and pointed to their left. An alien patrol was moving along the perimeter of the spire, 3 of the beings Jessica had come to recognize as Kithra warriors. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies encased in what appeared to be living armor that responded to their movements. Weapons were integrated into their arms, not carried, but grown as part of their physiology. Jessica checked her watch. 15 minutes until the aliens began repositioning their forces back to central patrol patterns. They needed to move now. She made the hand signal for advance, and the team emerged from the museum's shadows. The 200 meters to the alien facility stretched before them like an eternity. Every step brought them closer to technology that could vaporize them before they knew they were dead. But the distraction was holding. The alien sentries remained focused on the northern sectors of the city, where resistance cells were keeping up a steady harassment campaign. Jessica's team crossed half the distance without being detected. That's when everything went wrong. The purple substance covering the ground began to glow more brightly, and Jessica realized it wasn't just decorative, it was a detection system. The aliens knew they were here. Alarms began sounding throughout the facility, not the harsh mechanical sounds of human technology, but organic wails that seemed to come from the spire itself. The alien patrol Jessica had spotted earlier turned in their direction, weapons already beginning to charge with deadly energy. "Contact front!" Morrison hissed into her throat mic, forgetting the communications blackout in the heat of the moment. The mission plan was blown, but the mission itself could still succeed. Jessica made a quick hand signal: assault formation, direct approach. Stealth was no longer an option, but speed might still work. Park produced the first of his prepared charges, hurling it at the nearest alien defensive position. The explosion lit up the pre-dawn darkness, sending alien technology flying in all directions. The warriors advancing on their position staggered but quickly recovered, their living armor adapting to protect them from the blast. Chen, Rivera, and Kim opened fire with their modified assault rifles, using ammunition Dr. Vasquez had altered with alien disrupting elements. The rounds struck the advancing Kithara, causing their armor to spark and convulse but not dropping them immediately. "The entrance!" Jessica shouted, pointing to what appeared to be an opening in the base of the spire. It was their only chance now: get inside the facility where the aliens' numerical advantage would be reduced. Webb led the charge, his knowledge of urban combat proving invaluable as he identified cover points and safe routes of advance. Behind them, more alien warriors were emerging from defensive positions around the perimeter of the park. Time was running out rapidly. They reached the entrance with Park's explosives clearing the way. The opening dilated as they approached, another indication that the facility was more grown than built. The walls inside were covered with a substance that looked like living coral, pulsing with soft bioluminescence that provided enough light to see by. "Vasquez, which way?" Jessica called as they entered the spire. The scientist consulted a handheld device that Dr. Vasquez had cobbled together from salvaged alien technology. "Down. The neural core is directly below us, but I'm reading multiple levels between here and there." Behind them, alien warriors were beginning to pour through the entrance. The team's presence had been fully compromised, and there was no going back now. They had perhaps 10 minutes before the facility would be swarming with defenders. Jessica made the call that would determine whether Operation Nightfall succeeded or failed. "We go fast and loud. Park, clear us a path downward. Everyone else, covering fire." The demolitions expert produced a shaped charge designed for creating vertical access through floors. In the confined space of the alien facility, the explosion was deafening, but it accomplished its purpose. A hole opened in the floor, revealing another level below. "Go, go, go!" Jessica shouted, and her team rappelled down into the unknown depths of the alien command center.